Hello everyone. It's 2026 and this is Chuck Buntjer coming to you from San Francisco. I'm celebrating my 86th birthday this year. I've been living in San Francisco for 63 years. I've been in the tech business for 66 years, and I've been living at Fox Plaza Apartments on the 28th floor with a view of the entire Bay Area for 33 years. This video is about the first 25 years of my life and the ups and downs that one encounters as one lives his life or her life. The first photo I have is the only one I have of my sister, my mother, and myself. I was about 6 months old, and my mother was born in 1906. My sister was born in 1932, and I was born on February 4th, 1940. We only had a box camera, which was very difficult to use, so this is the only photo I have of myself, my sister, and my mother when I was a baby. Now this photo was taken when I was about 6 years old with my dog, my favorite cats, in front of the barn on a bale of hay. I had a pony, and we had milk cows, horses, steers, chickens, and pigs. And as far as I was concerned, they were all my pets. The first 5 or 6 years of my life, my sister, who was 8 years older than I, took care of me. And then she was in school, and my parents were out doing the chores or tilling the land or harvesting the crops. So I was alone most of the time. As I said, I went to a one-room school for 8 years, but most of the time I was alone because the closest neighbors were a mile away. The farm was fantastic, 100 acres of woods with an Indian mound where I used to play, of course, cowboys and Indians, a small pond at the bottom of the hill, hundreds of acres of pasture, of tillable land. A river ran around the edge of the farm, and a railroad ran through the middle of it. What a way to grow up. I had everything going for me. When I was 11 years old, my sister came home one day. She had graduated from high school and was working in Rockford. Rockford had a couple of 100,000 people in it. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. She laughed. She said, "Guess what?" She said, "I'm engaged." Engaged. She brought her new boyfriend home. He was just out of the Navy, fantastic young man, very handsome, very quiet, very hardworking. So we were all excited about that. But then one day, she came home with a small bag and stayed overnight, and I wondered what was going on. The next day, we all got in the car and went to Dixon to the hospital, and my mother was having surgery. My sister took me out to the park. I was 11 years old, and told me not to worry, she'd be okay in a few days. So I didn't even think too much about it. They kept me in the dark. Now, when my mother found out that my sister was getting married, she was so happy. She planned this fantastic wedding. It was just great. I and my cousin Randall lit the candles in the church before the ceremony, and my cousin Nancy threw the rose petals all over. And then after that, they opened the presents and then had a big dinner for about 40 or 50 people in the basement. What a wonderful time we had. Now it's 1952. My mother was not working on the farm anymore. She only stayed in the house so she could enjoy the indoor plumbing and an indoor bathroom and everything else that went on with the new house that she had built on the farm near Polo, Illinois. I was so excited that she was able to get out about and do things. She used to get dressed up and she'd go to the church socials. She'd join some women's clubs. I heard that she even joined the Farm Bureau. So she was always out and about, finally enjoying life. I was so happy for her. Now, one day, we were sitting on the couch in the spring of 1953. We were watching at around 9 o'clock at night the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II. My father was working at the other farm that we had near Pecatonica. She and I were on the couch, and I didn't realize how bad the surgery was. It was cancer, and they had taken off her entire left breast. We were sitting on the couch, and I was so happy to be with her. And she asked me if I could put some salve on the surgery, and when she showed me the wound, it was all black and charred flesh and radiation burns. And I hung onto the side of the couch and I almost fainted, and she was so sorry that she had asked me to do this. And I felt guilty ever since I didn't help her. Within 8 months, she passed away, and my sister and I just were so unhappy. And my father was very strange. Just before she passed away, I was walking from the barn, and he yelled out to me, "You know your mother's gonna die, don't you?" I just stopped for a second, didn't look back, and went on to the house. I never did figure out what was going on with him. So the next 2 years was really something. I never did understand what was going on between the two of us. But life goes on, and you do the best that you can. You know, I was only 13, 14 years old, maybe 15. I used to go to bed every night, put my face in the pillow for a couple of years, and cry my eyes out. I was a mess. Now, one day, my sister came to visit with her husband. They lived in Rockford. They had bought a new house, and they had a new car. And of course, I was jealous that they were living in the big city and I was on the farm. And my father came in and he sat us down at the kitchen table and he said, "I have news. I'm getting married." We said, "How can this be?" He said, "I met a woman, Rose, and she lives in Wisconsin. She has a daughter a year older than Chuck." And he said, "She's very nice, and I think we're going to get married very shortly." Well, my sister and I never did figure out where he met her, how they met. It was unbelievable. So I didn't think too much about it. And about a month later, he came in and told me, he said, "You're in charge of the farm." Now, I'm 15 years old, 180 pounds maybe. And I guess it was just a few months before I would turn 16. And he got in the car and off he went to Wisconsin. It was the first week of December. I was all alone. I had to milk 30 cows morning and night, feed them, take them out to the pasture, clean the barn out, feed the pigs, feed the chickens, get the eggs, and then in the evening, get the cows back in the barn, feed them, take care of them, and the next morning do this whole thing again, milk the cows, clean out the barn, and so on. About the third or fourth night, I was in the house about 9 and went out to check on the cows to make sure everything was okay, and one of them was trying to have a calf, and it was coming out the wrong way, and I did everything I could till midnight, but she and the calf died, and I had to hook them up with the tractor and a chain and put them out in the pasture, and then clean up the mess that was in the barn with the straw and clean all the blood and everything, and then throw it out the door. And then I went to bed for a couple of hours and milked the cows again the next morning. And my father comes back and he saw the cow was dead, and he told me I was a terrible person and didn't know up from down, and why didn't I call the vet, and on and on. And I was thinking about getting really mad at him But he was so excited about getting married that he forgot all about me in a day or so. And not as long after that, Rose and her daughter, who was a year older than I, came driving down from Rice Lake, Wisconsin. And she got there just before Christmas, and we had a wonderful Christmas, and she was a lifesaver. She told my father, "You can't do this to Chuck. He needs to do things after school. He has to be in the school play. He has to join some of the clubs, and like the 4-H club, and he has to do this and he has to do that." My father said, "Huh." And the next thing is, she said he needs to have a car when I was 17. So he got me a car. So here I was, hot-footing it all around in my car, going to school with it and going to the drive-in movies at night and just really enjoying myself. And my stepsister was always happy because she never had a brother, and I, of course, had a sister already, so I took care of her and made sure she was safe and okay and was treated fairly at school and everything. So talk about things coming out just so wonderful, it was hard to believe. Now I turned 18 and graduated from high school, and my stepmother got me a year in college at Rockford. It was a private school, French, English, history, art appreciation. And the year went by, and it was a wonderful time. And then I came home, and my father, I think, decided I was not going to go back to college. He took me to Forston, where his parents, my grandparents, lived, and then we went to the main drag of town. There's about 1,500 people in Forston. And there was our bank and a Ford dealership and a GM Ford dealership. And I wanted a Buick so bad, and he decided to buy it for me as a gift for being on the farm the rest of my life. Well, I was so excited about the new car, I forgot all about living on the farm, and I drive around Polo. I had a couple of girlfriends. One was going to be a nurse, one wanted to be a fashion model in Chicago, and I was hot stuff. And I may have been living on the farm, but I had as much going for me as anybody in town, so there. So then, it was around July or August, and I have to tell you this before the big news. About a year or so before, I came in from milking the cows in the morning, and Rose was staying there in a new suit, nylons, heels, nice hairdo, purse. And I said, "What's up?" She said, "I have a job in town. I'm a secretary for a CEO." I said, "This can't be. My stepmother, is working in town." She got in a car and off she went. My father was not happy. Okay, so a couple of years go by. Now it's 1959, and she comes home about June or July, and she says, "I've got you a job interview in Freeport, where I have my job, but it's at another big manufacturing company." I interviewed, and nothing happened for a month, and then a month went by, and she yells out, "There's a call for you. Get in here now." So I rushed into the house, and the man said, "Oh, we interviewed you a month ago. Do you remember?" "Yes, sir." He said, "We'd like you to start your job Monday if you would." "Yes, sir. I'll be in at 8 o'clock. He laughed. He said, "No, 9 o'clock is fine." So she and I are just so happy, and we're sitting at the table in the kitchen, and my father comes in for his afternoon tea and cookie, and he says, "What's up? I can tell there's something going on with the way you two are acting." And Rose says, "Chuck's starting his new job Monday in Freeport. We're both going to be gone all week long." My father sat down and had his tea and said, "Crap, so much for Chuck being on the farm the rest of his life." And Monday came along, and I got dressed up, and she got dressed up, and we each got in our own car, and off we went to Freeport. And I get there, It's Burgess Battery, and they showed me the office and stuff and all the equipment there, which I had no idea what it was. And they said, oh, tomorrow you're going to Chicago for 4 days. Chicago, all expenses paid, hotel, then you're going to go across to the IBM Service Bureau, and there they have classes on how to make data on punch cards, how to massage the data in sorters, how to program the tabulating machines using boards and wires, and printing reports out. So off I went to Chicago. I came back home, and my whole family, and no one could believe it. And I said, I'm in the computer business now. Who would have thought? All because of my stepmother. So I was extremely happy. I had everything going for me. I was in Freeport for about 2 years, and then I moved to Rockford, and was in a big new manufacturing company there with the latest IBM equipment. And I had my new car, of course. I had an apartment on the top floor of an old estate house on the Rock River with a view of the city and the river. My sister, of course, was living there. I had a couple of girlfriends, and I had a bunch of friends that I met that lived in the building. I just had a wonderful life, and I was all ready to maybe someday be a VP or something at this company I was working for. Well, one day I got a letter in the mail from my stepmother, and I thought it was kind of strange because I went home every 3 weeks or so, spent the weekend on the farm. And I opened it up, and there was a letter in it with government seal, and I was going to throw it away, and then I opened it and it said, you must report at the recruiting office in Rockford on a certain date, or else. Or else what? You've been drafted in the Army. So off I went, filled out the forms. The next thing, I was on the bus to the basic training in Fort Knox, Kentucky. I was in the 1st platoon. I was sharpshooter and won an award. I was in the top 10 cross country and had the highest IQ. And they wanted me to become a 2nd lieutenant, but I decided not to. That was fortunate for me because everyone else in the 1st platoon ended up in Fort Benning, Georgia, learning how to fight in the swamp. And if I had become a 2nd lieutenant, I would have been in Vietnam. Instead, they sent me to the Presidio of San Francisco to work in the computer center. The barracks looked over Golden Gate Bridge. The computer center looked over Sausalito, Angel Island, Alcatraz, downtown San Francisco. And of course, I drove out my big Buick two-door hardtop and worked the swing shift. So what a wonderful time I had. After work at midnight, we'd load up the car and we'd get over to the main cocktail lounges and bars that were open till 2, and we'd be in our fatigues, and the girls thought we were hot stuff, and people bought us drinks all over. And then we had the day off, so then we could drive around and go to the beach or whatever. And those poor guys that I was in the 1st platoon, they were probably in Vietnam, and no wonder they never wanted to talk to me again. Now, what's really interesting is here I am from the farm, from Rockford to San Francisco, and one of the men that I was working with was married. His wife lived in LA, and his mother had a house in Malibu. So we started flying down there whenever we could on Saturday mornings and spend 2 days down there. And I would stay overnight at his mother's house. It was just unbelievable. She was like a movie star. She had 5-inch high heels and she would lounge around on her chaise lounge, just like she was someone important with a big cigarette holder. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful time. Could you imagine it? On the farm in Rockford, in San Francisco, in LA, and in Malibu. How could this be? 1964. Now, it was even more fun. We would fly back from LA, we would have our suits with us, and we'd get all dressed up. We'd take a taxi down to Powell Market, get on the cable car, go up to the top of the hill, and go to the top of the mark. And we had a table there we liked, and the 70-year-old Jewish waiters would put us in a special table, and we'd sit there with our cocktails looking over the city, and we smoked our cigarettes. They were Dunhill cigarettes in a gold, with gold lettering on a red box, and with gold foil inside. We were just hot stuff, we thought, so sophisticated. What a wonderful time. And that was the military. Can you imagine? No wonder they said that the Presidio was where everyone and their mother wanted to go. Generals, majors, everybody who was going to retire spent the last few years in their own homes on the hills at the Presidio, overlooking the city and the Pacific Ocean and the San Francisco Bay. Was I lucky? Now you can see what happened to me over the years since I was lucky enough to come to San Francisco. I was in a dance group for quite a few years, raising money for HIV and for breast cancer. I also went to a lot of parties at City Hall, and I belonged to the museums, the theaters, the opera, the ballet, you name it. I'm out and about all the time. Just a wonderful life. Also, as you can see, I started traveling in the 80s, and I've been to 60 countries, and just wonderful, wonderful time traveling. And of course, where I live in a high rise on the 28th floor with a view of the whole Bay Area. And guess what? I owe it all to my stepmother, Rose. She was a lifesaver. I can't say how much I miss her. Actually, my stepsister, Terry Ray, found me on social media in the late 90s, and she had talked to me for about 15 years. And she contacted me, and I told her, I felt sad that I had missed out on the last 15 years or so of Rose's life. And she told me, oh, no, don't worry. Rose knows how much you loved her. And she said, you also took care of me, which was so nice. And she said, the last 10 years, Rose was in a facility and she was losing her memory. So she said it was a good thing that I didn't even try to get to contact her. But as she said, she loved me and she knew how much I loved her. Wasn't that nice of Terry? So that's my story about how my stepmother was an angel in disguise and had come down to earth and took care of me. And my whole life has come to this because of her. What a wonderful, wonderful life I've had.